Hi. I don't know if people can see me yet, but looks like people have joined. Great. We've got Laura here, and
Good morning.
yay, I can hear you and see you. That's that's looking great. All
Uh,
right.
you see, Let's Talk Kids Health. Hi there.
Yay, we have people.
Yay, this is our first time doing an Instagram live, so
Yeah, both of our first times, so hopefully this goes well. So I'm Elisa Zhang, and I am a physician and life coach who mostly coaches on money and money mindset and burnout. I like to help physicians actually figure out their path to financial independence so that they can practice medicine on their own terms. And Laura here works with physicians to find them jobs where they can actually also practice on their own terms and get the kind of position they're really looking for. So Laura, why don't you introduce yourself a little further?
sure. Hi, I'm Lara Hockmann. I'm a family medicine physician, and I went into helping doctors find practices where they can enjoy practicing medicine again, because I've experienced burnout, my friends experience burnout, and I see it all around. And what I was seeing was a lot of the doctors in private practice weren't really experiencing nearly as much burnout because they didn't have the same expectations put on them by the big hospital systems. So what I'm doing is helping doctors to find private practices and helping the practices to find doctors to join them so that we can really tackle burnout from one other way, one of the many ways that it needs to be tackled.
Yeah, it's so true. I started my career in private practice, and then I moved to the hospital system reluctantly, but in order to get back to my hometown. And I totally got burnt out in the hospital system. And it wasn't even about like the hours worked per se. It was really just lack of support, lack of autonomy, like just the setup, the culture, yeah, all of that.
It's very different. Yeah, when you're in a very small setting and everyone knows each other and you have a community and the culture is such that everyone cares about each other, you're happier. And when you're in the big hospital systems, it's just so easy to get lost in the shuffle.
Yeah, so obviously one of the big things when it comes to a job is how much you're going to make at that job, your salary and your benefits. So what can you tell us about, how to go about negotiating that and even potentially, physicians taking something a little less in order to get a better fit position?
Yeah, that's a good point about taking a little bit less, because one of the important things to note is that in the hospital systems, they're willing to take a loss on the practice because they know of all the other things all of the other ways that you're going to earn income for them. So the hospitals are able to give you a higher salary and make a loss on your salary because they know that you'll order imaging and you'll order labs and you'll refer to specialists and all the things that stay within the system when you work for them. So they're able to offer a higher salary because they're willing to make a loss on your salary. Private practices don't always have this option. Private practices are really, they have to work within the constraints of how to keep their doors open and how to keep the offices open. And so taking a slightly lower salary sometimes is necessary to go to private practice, but you know, without the burnout, you'll stay in medicine longer, you'll enjoy it longer, you'll enjoy your kids longer. That's not the case for every practice, but that's something to remember is, how much is financially, how much is your happiness worth? Is it worth $100,000? Would you gladly earn $100,000 extra to be miserable for a year? You just kind of gotta decide that. And some practices in private practice are able to offer the higher salaries, but keep in mind that if you're getting a higher salary from a hospital, it's because they're able to do that with all the other things that they're earning money on.
Yeah, and so maybe what are the kind of benefits that you can see working for a private practice that may be worth giving up that salary?
hmm a big one is work-life balance. And so a part of the work-life balance is hours, but something I've realized over the years as being a physician and working, I've tried every schedule, part-time, full-time, medium time, everything in between time. And what I realized is it's not really how much I'm working, but how happy I am in the job. Because when I go to work part-time and I'm miserable, I'm going to come home and I'm going to be cranky and I'm going to yell at my kids and I'm going to yell at my husband and I'm going to metaphorically kick the dog. I mean, like, I'm miserable. And so my work-life balance is totally off, even if I'm working part-time. Um, but, so one of the important things is about private practice is that you're in a smaller environment. If there's something you don't like, so just say your medical assistant or your nurse or receptionist or one of the people that's a part of the team is completely incompetent. In a hospital, it's really hard to fix that situation, or even unfortunately let them go. In a smaller environment, if the practice owner has to work with that incompetent person, number one, they don't want to put up with them. And number two, it's bad for their bottom line. So really working alongside the practice owner has huge benefits. And oftentimes in private practice, you can work towards partnership. And so you can not just have a voice because you're in a smaller system, but you can have a voice because you're actually working towards ownership as well.
When you recommend that conversation about partnership start?
Right at the beginning when you're interviewing. Because if your expectation is that you want to be a partner and that's not even an option, then don't interview there. So start day one before you even start working there. It starts during the interviews.
It looks like we've got a request for someone to join us on our live. Shall we? Let's see if we can make this happen.
Sure.
All right. It says that they've joined. I don't see a third picture though. Well, I don't know. Okay, I guess I don't. Anyway, like we said at the beginning, this is our first time doing this, so I did do out the request, so we'll see if they join us in if they have any questions. I don't know if I think you might be able to type questions as well because I'm seeing people typing things like hello. So what do you how do you talk to physicians, when they're thinking about leaving their hospital job and going to a private practice where it's more lifestyle related, about like what kind of pay cut they may be looking at and how to look at that?
Normally when I'm speaking with them, not always. So sometimes I will just help people find a practice without there being a practice to find, and then I go out and find them a practice. But oftentimes when I'm speaking to people, there is already a practice that's looking, and so I can tell them exactly what that will be. I've been fortunate, a lot of the practices I work with, actually, you don't take a pay cut. But thinking about it in the long term. So different people are able to think about it differently. So for example, yesterday I was speaking with a great candidate who's actually about to graduate residency and speaking about his salary expectations and this practice's salary expectations and what comes with that. And so a part of it is there is a partnership option and what that would earn. And so in the long term, taking a pay cut in this instance would actually be very short term because in a year or two, he would become partner and then that pay increase is pretty significant. So that's something I speak about is partnership, thinking long term. Some people are just saying, well, but I earned 300 and I want to earn 300, or but I earned this and so I should earn that. And so some people really just aren't quite at that point yet where they're ready to think about it that way. And that's okay, but there's long-term gain, there's lifestyle gains, there's a lot of gains to it. Hopefully it doesn't have to be the case. Hopefully you don't need to take a pay cut. But you really need to think about why you're leaving and do what's needed.
Yeah, and I really think that's where money mindset comes in. And really, what is the purpose of you as a physician, right? How much of the purpose is just how much money you can make versus how much you can serve and, how you feel when you leave, your job every day. If you're leaving your hospital job, frustrated on a regular basis, I mean, how much would you pay in order to get rid of that frustration, right? And there are different ways to go about it. I mean, as a coach, I can tell you, like, you can invest in coaching, which, obviously costs something, and you may be able to work out a lot of your frustrations just by changing your mindset. Or you may really find that changing your circumstance and moving positions is really what you need. And it may, just, you've got a problem. You've got a problem in your current job. How much are you willing to pay to overcome that problem? And how much you pay may be just, taking that lower salary. But also, like, what do you kind of need that money for, right? If you're going to practice, if you're thinking, oh, I need that money so I can retire earlier, well, if you're in a better position, you can enjoy life now, and maybe you won't feel the need to actually retire earlier or leave medicine earlier, or, oh, if I make more money, then I can cut back. Well, it doesn't really make sense either, right?
Exactly. And something, that you work with people on too is how are you spending your money? Are you, spending way too much money and more than you're able to afford versus, can you be a little bit more frugal so that you can afford to take, maybe it is work part-time or work less so that you can really let your money stretch further and maybe you don't need to be earning as much in the first place.
Right. I mean, are you spending your money because you're essentially buffering all your negative feelings and you're just trying to feel better by buying stuff? Or are you, spending a lot of money on buying expensive vacations because you need that escape from your work? Well, what if you don't need as much of escape for your work? I mean, I'm not saying don't take vacation, but if you're just living life looking for the next vacation, maybe it is, worth a little drop in your income in order to not have that mentality of, okay, I'm just working for that next vacation.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. And I do think, as physicians, we spend so much time in kind of delayed gratification and, kind of earning a lot less than our counterparts. I know my sister, she went to business, right after undergrad, and she had her MBA paid for by her company. When she moved to a different company, there'd be like relocation, and, I guess some hospitals pay some relocation, but not to the extent that she was getting when she moved around. And so when we compare to our peers who graduated college at the same age and what they have and, what we're able to, spend because of all our medical training time, as well as the years in residency and fellowship, where we are paid, but, kind of a lot less than what, I truly think our worth is. And then we finally get to the point where we have that big paycheck. We just kind of expect all that to fulfill us and to buy kind of everything we quote want and need. But in reality, we have everything we need at any given time. And yes, it may be nice to have that bigger house or that more expensive car. But when you really think about, like, what do you need to be happy, hopefully it's not just those things, because if you're just looking at those type of things to make you happy, I think in the end, you're probably going to feel like you have a more empty life towards the end of your life.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Learning to appreciate what you have and your family and, do you need a fancy car? Could you be happy with a Honda or, whatever?
Yeah, I
Exactly.
still have a Honda Civic, and I got a high-end Honda Civic. It's got the leather seats, that warm up, which I really love that feature, and it's reliable and gets me in place to place. And I test drove Audis and Mercedes-Benz, and I just could not justify like a slightly nicer car for like 2 to 3 times the car payment.
Exactly. I love my Honda.
And I'm one of those persons, like, I got a ding on my Honda Civic, and I'm a little annoyed at that ding. I'm sure I'd be a lot more annoyed if it were not.
Yes. I think the same way. I drive a Honda Odyssey. I drive my big mommy van, and I love that it's a Honda because, my kid rode her bicycle into it. It's got scratches all down the side. I'm like, it's a Honda. Oh well. Like I feel okay with not having an expensive car because I would be devastated if something happened to an expensive car.
Yeah, my husband has a Honda CR-V, and so, we move things in it, and so it gets scratched up. And, I don't love when I see the scratches, but at the same time, I'm like, well, that's why we have the car to transport stuff. And so, of
Exactly.
course, it's going to get, a little beat up in the process.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. So, I don't know. I think that's probably a pretty good wrap. Any things that you want to say? Any last pearls you want to add?
Um, yeah, I'll just say a couple of things if you want to talk about negotiating for a higher salary. We talked about taking a lower salary, but if you want to talk about, what to say to get a higher salary, that's certainly something we can quickly go
Oh,
over if you
right.
want.
You should definitely talk about negotiation. That is right.
Um,
Go for it.
I'll just be brief. And, Chris Voss talks a lot about this as well, but that's the whole topic for another day. Um, but, one of the things when you're talking about salary is, and probably the biggest mistake that I see is I earned 300,000 and so I would like to get 300,000 or whatever the number is. I'm just throwing a number out, but I earn this, I want to earn that. Like there's no substance to it. So when you're negotiating, you really want to talk about why you think that you're worth whatever the number is, 100,000, 50,000, a million, whatever the number is. So is it, you start with, you can start with you need to do some research, and then you say, this is the normal salary range for this position, and this is what I expect. So people in this position are getting X. I believe I am at least average or whatever number. You talk about what value you bring. So as a physician, it would be things like, what extra skills do you have? Are you able to, you do musculoskeletal ultrasound, or do you read DEXA scans, or, what skills do you bring? What soft skills do you bring? Do you have access to certain specialists? What is it that makes you special? Is it that your patients are going to follow you because they all love you and they'll stay with you forever? Will your staff follow you, which is a huge one right now with all the staff leaving all the offices? What is it that you can bring to the company that makes you worth the number that you're asking for? And then, this is a big one, especially when you're negotiating with the hospitals, is don't give a range. When they say, what number do you want? You don't say, I'd like to earn between $10 and $20, because you know what number they're going to go with. Give a number. So you have the minimum number that you'd be happy with. So just say that's $50. I would like to earn $50. I'd be happy with that number. Go 10% higher than that and say, I'd like $55. If you're working with a company or a recruiter and that's not within their budget, then they should be telling you that's not within budget, and then they should actually just end it right there. Or would you be willing to go lower for this position? Because you don't want to waste your time and you don't want to waste their time. But if you pick your minimum number and you go a little bit higher, that usually is pretty good. The hospitals will 100% go with the lower range. The private practices that I've worked with all really, really want to work with their doctors and do what they can, as much as is reasonable. Feel free to leverage other offers. So if you have other offers, it's not insulting to say, I'm speaking with other companies and this is what they're offering me. It can be insulting if you say it a certain way, but through the whole thing, you need to be assertive, you need to be calm, you need to be humble and kind, because you don't want to sour the process, and these are the people you're going to be working with. But if you think about, parenting as an example of, to compare it to, if my kids yell at me, go get me my socks, I'm not going to get them those socks. But if they say, hey mom, I'm just eating breakfast, can you go get me my socks? I'm like, oh sure, yeah, okay. So it's the same in negotiation. Be kind, be humble throughout the whole process, and typically that goes a lot better that way.
Yeah, actually, that brings me to a question. So I just recently talked to a recruiter, and he asked, what kind of salary I was looking for, and I kind of said, so he's like, oh great, this job is willing to pay a lot more. So that's what he told me. But then when he talked to the job, like he told them what I was willing to take, and so I wasn't really happy with that. Now knowing that they were willing to pay more, and he basically just like put me in a position to get less. What are your thoughts on that?
He shouldn't have done that.
So. Yeah, so basically I'm like, you know what, we're not going any further because I know I'm going to be unhappy now, like, and it's just not going to be a good negotiation because he kind of revealed too much information to both sides, yeah. Right? Like,
yeah. But you could be honest and say, hey, I know I said this is what I'd be happy with. I believe I'm worth XYZ. There's always a way around that. If you know that they're willing to pay more, pay more. Ask for it, because if you end things right then and there, it's completely off of the table. But if you entertain it and see what happens, and this is where leveraging another offer can come in. You can say, hey, well, if it's a make or break anyway, what have you got to lose, right? So you can say, especially if you have another offer, I'm offered this much, or MGMA debt is this much, and I'm not interested if I'm going to get less than whatever. I know I said this, but what have you got to lose,
Yeah.
right?
In this case, it was really then I'm not willing to sign their non-compete, so that was really the reason not to go for
Good for
it.
you. Don't do it.
Yeah, these non-competes are sometimes really ridiculous. So.
They are. I understand it from the practices standpoint where they don't want you to open up next door, but there's a difference between next door and 25 miles away. There's a big difference.
Especially when they're having you go to multiple locations and they're saying like, whatever mile radius around any location, like, yeah, like, so you're
No.
sending me, across this whole area, you're basically like eliminating the entire north of the state. It just doesn't make
Yeah,
sense.
that's bullying you to stay. That's not getting you to stay because it's a great place to work. That's just bullying. Yeah, that's awful.
Yeah. So is that a place that, I mean, how successful have people been about negotiating away non-competes?
It depends. With the smaller practices, they typically are more flexible. With the big hospital systems, it's very hard to negotiate out a non-compete. Like I say, if you don't ask, you don't get. Personally, I had a hospital offer me a 25-mile non-compete, and that was non-negotiable for them, so I walked away. Um, so it just depends on the hospital system. I would say if it's a system you really want to work at, see if they'll work with you. See if they can decrease the number. There is another system that I spoke with once that was willing to decrease the number, which it's just make your number reasonable and don't, make it 5 miles or whatever. Um, so it's possible. It depends on the system. Um, if you don't
What
ask, you
about
don't
with private practices?
Private practices tend to be more flexible. Usually you can get them down to about 10 miles. There's a big fear for private practices that they put so much into a new physician. They typically don't want someone who'll sign no non-compete. And I do understand that, but they're more reasonable. What I
What
tell my
about like the
practice,
1 year versus 2 years?
ah, yeah, I don't know. It depends on the practice. And what I typically tell the private practice owners, and if there's a private practice owner watching, take note. Sometimes I'll hear things like, "Well, we can't enforce it anyway." So I'm like, well, why lose a candidate over something you're not going to enforce anyway, right? So
Right. Yeah, for a smaller private practice, I would imagine it would be a lot more expensive to really enforce it versus a
exactly,
hospital, would do it just to make an example so that other people don't break the non-compete.
exactly. And the hospital non-competes are such that you have to move cities or states sometimes. So it's just not, they're not reasonable non-competes, the
Yeah.
hospital system.
Though, I mean, sometimes, I mean, you really can negotiate. So I know with the hospital system that I recently left, the original non-compete was 10 miles from any one of their locations, which is a huge area. And I got them to go down to 10 miles from my primary 2 locations. And I actually went to 5 locations. So it
Wow, that's
actually,
great.
yeah.
And in the negotiation process when you're going to work with the hospital or the company, see what you can put in the contract, whether it's decreasing the number, decreasing the years, or make a way to get out of it. So the contract should say something like, this is your non-compete, but to get out of it, you buy out or whatever. They sometimes will work with you as far as like, if you work with us 1 day a week for a year after you leave, then the non-compete is gone or whatever. So sometimes they'll work with you, but
That's good
you know,
advice. Thinking more outside the box on it.
exactly. Yeah.
All
But yeah,
right.
try to set those expectations up front.
Yeah. Well, this was great. Thanks for coming on with me.
Yeah, this was awesome.
All right. So I see we have a bunch of people join. I haven't seen actually any questions. Um, so I guess at this point, um, yeah, so I think coming some summarizing points is, if you're burnt out at your current workplace, you may want to consider either coaching to kind of get yourself in a better mindset. And actually, when I got burned out in the hospital, that was the way I did. I first got coached and really got myself in a better place to really figure out what I really wanted. And then I went and started looking for other positions. And then with that, I had a much more sense of what I wanted. And I did take a private practice position that was very much more lifestyle based, which included a significant pay cut. Partially because I was going part-time, but even more so, like, percentage of how much I'm working to how much I was being paid, it's even a further pay cut. As well as a significant benefit cut. I had a lot more benefits in the hospital, but so far, so I think it's been worth it, because so luckily you don't always have to have a pay cut to get into a better situation, and there are a lot more benefits. But you want to really think about, like, what you want and what would be more meaningful in your life, and if it is a pay cut, like, is that worth it? Like, would you pay money to make such a problem go away, and just consider that pay cut the cost of that?
Right.
But maybe you'll even make more. So, I'm not saying take a pay cut, but at least in my situation, I looked at several different positions, and, for what I was looking for, I decided it was worth the pay cut. So.
And are you happy with your choice? Was it worth it?
So far, so good.
Good.
All right. Well, thanks for being on with me.
Yeah, thanks. This was great.
All right. So, all right. And thanks for everyone who's watching, and anyone watching in the future. So if you want to contact me, you can always DM either of us on Instagram. Laura, do you want to say how people can reach out to you otherwise?
Yeah, sure. You can reach me here on Instagram. My website is www.happydayhealth.co. And there's a form on there. You can reach me directly through there. I'm on LinkedIn. My name is Lara Hockmann, MD. That's LARAHOCHMAN, MD.
Great. Yeah, my website is www.growyourwealthymindset.com. You can DM me here. On Facebook, my name is Elisa, Elisa, last name Chiang. On LinkedIn, I'm Elizabeth, last name Chiang. All right, so it's great talking to you, Laura, and we should do this again some other time.
Yeah, that was great.
All right, let's see how we actually end this.